Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the QT2 Systems podcast series, the coaches of QT2 Systems. I'm Reem Jishi, and I'm the content director with QT2 and our featured ghost coach today. You're a ghost, Bob.
Okay,
Featured coach today is Coach Bob Richter. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us today. So I think you officially make QT2 coach number 21 that I'm interviewing. So I'm pretty
Nice. Good. Good
It's
number.
been so much fun to get to know all the coaches through this process. So I'm going to start with you. Same question I always do, which is how did you first come to QT2 Systems?
Joined QT2 as an athlete at the very beginning of 2018. I'd been dabbling in triathlon for a few years, and I had a coach from about 2012 through 2017, and I kind of plateaued, and wanted to kind of take my training and racing to sort of the next level that I didn't think I was getting with my current setup with my coach. And a friend of mine that lived near me was coached through QT2 at the time. I think working with Tim Snow, she was exceptional, Kona qualifier, just really, really good. And she raved about QT2 and referred me to Tim, and we had a conversation. He referred me to Karen Allen Turner and another coach. I interviewed both, and I chose Karen, and we worked together through 2021. And then she, decided to take a step away from coaching. And then now I'm with Vinnie Johnson, which is going great. So then we are today.
All right, great. So you said that so when you came to QT2, you had already been doing triathlon for a while. So let's back up a little. Tell me when you started with triathlon.
It was about 2012. And I started pretty slowly. So like, I think in 2012, I did a sprint triathlon. It was either 2012 or 13. I did a sprint, and I had so much fun. And I got into that a little bit because I was doing a little bit of riding, kind of to recover from long runs on the weekends. So I had a friend of mine that was kind of a part-time coach, but a very, very good triathlete. And he turned me on to it. So you should give it a try. There was a race coming up over Labor Day. So I tried it, and it was just a sprint, like I said, and it was so much fun. I was like, the bug bit me right then and there. So then, but I started pretty slow. So then I did a half distance race, not an Ironman branded race, but a half distance race in 2013 in Oklahoma. And then in 2014, I got in with Ironman races. And then 2015, I think I did my first Ironman in Texas. And I did that race 3 times, but that's sort of how it flowed for me. And then when I got with QT2 in 2018, then, the training and the focus and everything just accelerated for me. I was just so very, very, very into it, and still am, of course. So, but that's a little bit of that background, dating back to 2012 or so.
All right, so you said that you did some riding to recover from your long run. So you were a runner before.
Right. Yeah, that was my focus for a number of years, just solely focused on running. And I, got a bike because I was getting a little banged up at times. So I got a bike just to, like after a long run Saturday, I would just do an easy spin around the neighborhood or something for an hour or whatever on the weekends. And that's sort of just segued into, giving triathlon a try. And I was extremely green. I knew nothing, absolutely nothing. So the learning curve was very steep, very, very quick, including learning how to swim in a pool, laps.
Well, I was just going to ask you that. You talked about the run, you talked about the bike, but so how about the swim piece of it?
It was rough. It was very rough. I mean, I knew how to swim, but there's a big difference between knowing how to swim and then hopping in a pool and swimming laps. It's a big difference. And I still remember the first time I did it. It was 25-yard lap pool. Down and back is 50 yards, and I didn't even make it halfway down one way before I had to stop. Wow. I was like, oh my gosh, what is wrong with me? It's like, I know how to swim, but it was such an odd feeling just trying to swim one length of the pool and not being able to do it. Yeah. And then it just came down to sticking with it. It was 3 days a week, every week. My coach helped me, build up my distance over time, and working with, fins and a kickboard and a pull buoy and different things. Doing some video and getting some swim analysis done, things like that. And it's amazing how quickly I struggle to say swim fitness because I don't consider myself to be a really great swimmer, but I get the job done. But anyway, swim fitness did improve pretty quickly just with consistency and just sticking with it for a long time and working really hard because it was not easy at first, very difficult. I don't have a swimming background. I'm envious of people that came from a swimming background, like in high school or when they were really young, because to me, they're like fish. They're so easy. I have an athlete now. He was a swimmer, like in high school and first couple of years of college. And it's just amazing, his fitness, and it never went away. I mean, he can swim a 130 average for, 2000 meters and not even think about it. And without even swimming in a few weeks sometimes, because his fitness it's just muscle memory for him. And I never had that.
Yeah,
So
I mean, swimming is one of those sports that when you do it growing up, I mean, you swim hours a day,
right,
every day.
right.
Like you swim more than you would in some of the other sports. So I think you just build up so much, so much time staring at the black line.
Yes.
But I always say that the downside to that there's a huge advantage to having a run background is because when you hit the run, you're like, I got this. And
Mhm.
everyone that you pass along the way, you get to take their energy away from them. So there's like a real advantage. So being a good swimmer only is good if you're also a good cyclist and a good runner. It's tough to be a
Yes,
good swimmer and not be strong at the other ones because then you just get passed a lot. And that's
that's right. Yep,
unless
that's
you're
right.
so far ahead.
Yeah,
You get
yeah.
this. So but all that stuff you talked about in the pool and working with a coach and getting swim analysis, that wasn't before your first triathlon, right? You just,
Yeah, no, it was
yeah,
after. I mean,
it was after.
I
So,
did the sprint first because it was a very short swim. And
okay.
then I realized, certainly realized I really need work here. I need a lot of help. And so I was in the pool for a while. And then my coach one day said, why don't you have your wife, if she's with you, which we used to swim sometimes at the same time, take some video of you. And actually I did that with Karen as well, because she was very good at swimming, good coach at that. And we took some video and she gave me some tips, and it could just be little things, little tweaks to think about that can actually make a meaningful difference. So I've done that a couple different times. I would say sort of on an informal basis, but my wife along the pool and following and videoing me with her phone, and then I download it and send an email to my coach at the time. They look at it and give me a few tips. So it was very helpful though, but a lot of it was a function of just swimming regularly and very consistently every week, at least 3 times, or usually 3 times a week is what I was doing. So
All right.
just staying
So
at it.
you did your sprint, you got the bug. So
Yep.
what made you say, okay, I'm going to go from a sprint to longer distance? Because you
I,
sound so much straight from the sprint to the half iron distance.
yeah,
Yeah.
part of it was watching the IRONMAN World Championships on TV
Mm.
and sitting with my wife and watching that, because she doesn't do triathlon, but we were both very into watching sports and things. And watching that and watching the stories of people and watching some people cross that finish line. And then I looked and said, if that guy there can do it, I can do this. So, and I didn't want to just jump straight into a full distance race. To me, that at the time was just ungodly overwhelming. But I thought I'm going to try the half. I'm going to try that. I'm going to do it. I'm going to just jump in and go for it. And I did. And I did pretty well the first time. I cramped up a little bit on the run at the end, but I was happy with the result. I was happy that I finished. It was really fun. The people I met, just in transition and on the course and the volunteers, everything was just so energizing and fun that, I just never stopped. Okay, what's next? What's the next one? And then I just gradually, after that first time I did it, I think in 2014, by 2015, I did, a half Ironman Texas in Galveston, the half distance race down there, and then did the full distance race later in May. I think it was at that time. They moved it now to April, but that was kind of my focus because they were home, near home, so I didn't have to travel very far. So I focused on those races at first when I first got rolling with it. So
Yeah.
it's just energizing and fun for me, and the people you meet are fantastic.
So I'm just kind of curious, as a runner, did you work with a coach or no?
No, I didn't. But I had some really exceptional runners that I ran with.
Yeah.
And there was one guy in particular that I did get some tips from. And one of the things he taught me, this is probably around 2010, 29 or 2010, was have a midfoot strike and cadence. He really changed my focus and my attention to cadence.
Mhm.
And I worked on it on my own for my own training. I worked on it for quite a while, and now it's very much second nature. And so my target is for me is 180 steps per minute, both feet, of course, is always the magic number, but it's not always that number, of course. Sometimes it's 175 or 177, somewhere in there. But by doing that, you're landing your feet under your center of gravity, you're reducing the chances of injury. There's a whole bunch of benefits that come with that. And I work with my athletes on that too. When I'm watching their run workouts and I see what their cadence is, and then we have conversation about it. But from a coaching perspective, running, that is the biggest tip that I got over the years. But at that time I was training with a group of people focusing on like the Dallas Marathon, for example, here near where I live. But that was one of the best tips I ever had, focusing on cadence and midfoot strike and that kind of thing. Really helpful, very helpful for me.
Yeah, I mean, that change is changing, shifting your cadence can change so many other things.
Right.
Yeah. So, but then when you got into triathlon, it sounds like you figure out pretty quickly that you need to work with a coach.
Yes. Oh, I knew I couldn't do it alone. There's no way. I mean, first of all, I knew nothing about training as a swimmer. Absolutely nothing. I knew nothing about training for triathlon on the bike. No clue at all. And I knew how to run, and I could train for marathons because that's what I had done for a number of years. But how to put it all together, I had no idea. So I hired a coach. It was not a QT2 coach, of course, when I first started. And that individual, laid out my training for me from week to week. The feedback was kind of intermittent. It wasn't real as robust as we get with QT2 coaches, but it was a roadmap, and it was, very much volume focused, and got me aerobically fit, so I knew that I could complete the distance on race day. But when I decided I wanted to really get better as an age group athlete, more competitive, and when I got into 2017, then toward the end of that year, I realized, I need to figure something else out in terms of getting a different coach that can guide me, more hands-on, so to speak. And that's when I engaged with QT2, and that changed everything. It really did. It made a huge, huge difference for me. Huge.
Yeah. So it sounds like you knew that you had more in you than your performance.
Yeah, that's how I felt. Absolutely. And QT2 got it out of me too. There's no question about it. Yeah.
So tell me, I think both of the coaches you worked with, Karen Allen Turner and Vinnie Johnson, are incredible. Karen actually was the one that brought me into QT2 as a coach. So,
Sure.
so what you said, huge differences. Explain that a little bit more to me. What was different about how Karen and then Vinnie coached you versus what you had before?
Yeah, well, part of it is just the feedback on the training. So I would get feedback almost every single day on every workout that I did. And the training, let's look at, if you look at bike and run training, for example, on the bike, we have heart rate targets and power targets. I never had that previously. It was just ride 5 hours, ride 4 hours, ride 3 hours. It was just time, that's all I got. I didn't know any better at the time. And then when I come to QT2, then we do the testing. We establish my heart rate thresholds on the bike, my power thresholds on the bike. I had like a pedal-based power meter at the time. And then we did our training zeroed in based on those heart rate and power targets. Same thing with the run in terms of heart rate. I even for many years when I was a runner, I never even wore a heart rate monitor. I never did, just because I didn't think I needed it. It just wasn't something that I used. I got into triathlon and with QT2 anyway, and I realized I need to be smart about this. So I got a heart rate monitor, and we established all those metrics and training thresholds as well. And so it's very targeted training, very specific, and sometimes you're working on speed or working on endurance. And, I get a session where I have to do a 3.5 hour, 4 hour ride on the weekend. And I'm targeting specific heart rate, ranges during that time, or intervals, trying to target certain power output at the time. So very, very targeted, very specific. That all blends in and feeds into what you want to accomplish on race day. So the specifics of it was very different than what I'd been used to. It makes a big difference when you do that over a period of weeks and months, significantly.
And then how did that play out in terms of, I mean, just kind of give me a sense of before you started working with QT2, where you were finishing in your age group, and then after, like what?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. It was, I mean, top 50 maybe, I mean, it was more of a situation where I finished and I was thrilled to be done, or thrilled to finish, right? I'm happy, got the medal, this is great, right? But and you look, and then I'm on page 5 of the finisher results or something. It's like, I'd rather be up on page 1, if I want to look at the finish results, and I want to be in the first view, like the top 20 or better, right?
Yeah.
And so with QT2, I had some reasonable success. I was in like top 10 many times. I podium a few times. I had a Ironman 70.3 World Championship qualification. I had opportunities, but wasn't able to take them for roll down positions to go for the World Championships. For Kona, not even to get to Kona, but at St. George when the World Championships was there. So, it put me in really much, much better positions on the first page of the finisher board, so to speak. But I mean, there are some coaches and athletes that are just exceptional and legit Kona qualifiers, top 3 in their age group. And I came close to that, very, very close. And I'm not done working yet, of course, but compared to where I was and where QT2 brought me, it's, I mean, way up the leaderboard by far. So big difference, huge difference. I'm very happy with that.
That's awesome.
I'm
And
proud of it too,
from
actually.
the like the fueling standpoint, did you feel any difference there in terms of how to get yourself through a race from a nutrition
Yeah,
and hydration standpoint?
very much. I remember when I first joined QT2, had the dietitian consultation, and I remember Chrissy asking me to talk about what I had been doing for fueling. And she was very polite, but what I had been doing, she was like, oh, you could almost see her face on the other end of the phone, like, oh gosh, we don't, that's not a good idea, but that's what I've been doing, and had mixed results with it, cramping sometimes, or GI issues on a run, whatever. And when I changed with that and worked toward, the applesauce, which I love anyway, but the applesauce protocol and the Gatorade endurance protocol and those kinds of things, that made a tremendous difference for me. Just huge. I mean, fueling is like the 5th discipline or 4th discipline, whatever. It's part of it. You've got to nail that right. And I tell my athletes, including the one of my athletes that just had a terrific race this past weekend in Florida, fueling will make or break your day. It absolutely will. You've got to get it right. And so, we talked about it all the time, especially on, longer workouts on the weekends. You've got to practice it. So yes, fueling is critical. And the race fueling plan that I got with QT2, I still use it now. I've modified a little bit, but very little, and I'm still using it, and it still works. No doubt about it.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're absolutely right. You can do all the training, do everything right, and then race day, if you don't follow a plan, I mean, forget it. I mean, just
Right.
the longer the race gets, the more important. I mean, a sprint, whatever, you can go through the whole thing without drinking
Yeah.
if you had to. But, that doesn't work for 70.3, and definitely not for Ironman.
Not for long course distance, not at all. No.
So, all right. So we've talked about you as an athlete at some point.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm talking to you today because you're a coach with QT2. So, how did you how and when did you become a coach with QT2?
So that's a interesting story. So I reached out to Tim. I've been thinking about getting into coaching for a while, kind of part-time, as I'm still working and working toward a retirement date here soon. And I called Tim because I wanted to ask him, how did he recruit coaches? How did he find people to coach for QT2? And he told me, he said, the way we find them is exactly how we're finding, how you're calling me right now. We have athletes that have been with us for a while that express an interest in coaching with us. And so I was doing that. I didn't expect, when I called and asked him about it, I did not expect that I would be sort of offered an opportunity to coach with QT2. I was honestly curious, how do you source people? Because I want to take those steps so that maybe you could source me. It's kind of what I was thinking at the time. And it went from that phone call right then and there to, okay, Bob, we're going to bring you on as a coach, and we're going to take you through our coach training and all of that. And it happened fairly quickly. And I was flattered that Tim was willing to bring me on and do that. And so it was an awesome day when I realized what was happening. So I went through all of the coach training, the design QT2 coaches training and everything, and I've been a coach, a little over a year, about a year or so now, and I absolutely love it. And so when I work out of my corporate position and retire from that, anticipating in the next few months here, I'm a full-time coach today. That's what I consider myself, and I'll be continuing to build up my athlete roster, so to speak, so that I have a full-time group of folks to work with. So.
Okay. So what types of athletes do you work with?
Right now I'll have 6 athletes in January, and because I have one that's going to start on January. They're all triathletes, with one exception is just a runner. He's a runner. And the ages they vary from, I think my youngest athlete is 25. He's the same age as my oldest son. Hell of a runner. So I'm training with him right now. And then the other ones are triathletes. A couple of the guys are very experienced, and one brand new to triathlon, absolutely as new as I was when I started. And he just did Ironman 70.3 in Florida last week. That was so much fun to see his success there.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a little mix of age, 25 to close to 50, and a mix of mostly triathletes, but one runner. And then I had another runner earlier in the year who I helped train for the Berlin Marathon. And then now she's taking a break and trying to determine what she wants to do next. So that's kind of the mix at the moment.
All right. So do you have, from an experience standpoint, that you like to work with? I mean, newer people more, or just just the range?
No, not a preference at all. I've enjoyed both sides of it. I really, really enjoyed working with, I'm still working with the newest athlete that I have that was absolutely brand new to triathlon, similar to myself. He had never swam laps in a pool, had never trained on the bike. He had done some running. That was really fun to teach him literally everything, like from how do we use Training Peaks, how to interact with that program, talking him through how to set up his bike, how to buy a race bib holder. I mean, all these different things that we take for granted because we've done it so many times. I helped walk him through all of it. On the other end of the spectrum, guys that have already completed a couple of Ironman distance races and half Iron races, marathons, that kind of thing, and just are looking for something different. One person that I have has not really had a coach before, has been more self-coached, but wants to have a little more rigor in his coaching, or more rigor in his coaching, or some rigor, and also expand on the nutrition aspect of things. So there's kind of a mix right now, and it's great because it's variety in terms of the people I'm working with and levels of experience. It keeps me on my toes. And I enjoy that a great deal. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I learned something different from every one of my athletes, I mean,
Absolutely.
which makes it fun.
It does. Yes, it does.
So, do you have a coaching philosophy or approach?
Yeah, I do. It's based on kind of 4 things. First of all, starting with the athlete's goals. When you look at a season or the beginning of a year, what their goals are, and from there, I look at flexibility. I'm going to mention these and then I'll come back to them. So flexibility and balance, consistency, and then communication, feedback. But flexibility in terms of, we all have different life priorities. We want to train. We have a family. Sometimes we have children, things we're doing, in addition to our jobs. We might have, church functions or other volunteer activities that we do. So there's a lot to balance at times. So, it's important that, the training from week to week is flexible in terms of moving things around. We just have to communicate. The athletes need to communicate with me, and we have to go back and forth. So flexibility is important. Balance in terms of, covering all the bases. So if you have triathletes, your swim, bike, run, strength training is in there, and we're discussing nutrition regularly. So that's what I'm referring to in terms of balance. In addition to work and family, like I mentioned. So flexibility ties into both of those with work, family, children, vacations, understanding when vacations are, so I can schedule recovery weeks probably, if that fits. And then consistency. And what I mean by that is, like I mentioned before, in my swimming experience, I had to swim 3 times a week consistently every week for many, many weeks to be able to have some level of fitness and be able to do laps in a pool and get ready for a race. So I think consistency yields durability as an athlete. So the more consistent we are regularly, day in and day out, we become more durable as athletes. And then the last piece is the communication part of it. Athletes telling me what's going on with them so I can adjust their schedules to meet their needs from week to week and month to month. And we go back and forth that way. And then me providing them feedback on their training. If they're hitting targets, if they're looking good, if they look, maybe if their heart rate spiking weird, I might ask about the weather that day, or if they're tired, or what's going on. So we have to communicate, and talk with each other. So my philosophy is kind of balanced around those 4 key things, with overarching what the athlete's goals are. Are we targeting certain races, or we may have athletes that really aren't targeting races initially. They just want to build fitness and figure it out later. And then we just start that way and roll with it for a while. So, there's just no right or wrong way of scheduling training. There's not one way for every triathlete. We're all different. We all have different strengths. We all have different development opportunities. We all have different, commitments that we have to do from day to day. Other than training, we have to balance it all. But at the end of the day, we have to it's got to be fun, and enjoy the process and have fun. And if it's not fun, we have to talk and figure something out, because it's too much work. It's too big of a time commitment for it not to be fun, not to enjoy the process. So that's always key. And for me personally, I've found passion with, the routine of training every day. And so I hope my athletes have the same level of passion and enjoyment out of it, because it can be so rewarding. So try to strike all those balances and make it all work so that we all have fun. And that's what it's about at the end of the day.
Yeah, it definitely is. We put so much time into it that if it's not making you happy and it becomes another job, like that's, unless you love your job, which I know we both do, but it has to be fun. And
no doubt.
Yeah. So what would you say when your athlete, let's talk about your athlete who just raced Haines City, who's brand new, and he had a great day.
He had a very good day. Yep, he did.
So I'm sure coming into this that he expressed some doubts to you about whether he could do it. He must have, right? So what was your how'd you handle that?
Well, first of all, we had plenty of time to get ready. And we scheduled a plan that worked for his schedule, which is, he had very robust work schedule and with his family and everything. So he had a lot going on. But I just assured him as much as I could that we're going to have you ready. And he didn't have any expectations of winning his age group, for example. That was not the goal. The goal was to show up healthy. He had 2 people that he works with that was racing with him who were very experienced people. And his goal was not to compete with them or against them, but compete against himself and go from being a brand new triathlete to a finisher of a 70.3 and do it and hopefully feel good in the process and sort of get faster along the way. And that's really exactly what happened. So he, first of all, followed the plan. He was as consistent as any coach could ask. And when something came up where it caused a problem with training, he would always reach out to me and say, Bob, I've got an issue. I can't make this swim today. Can I just move it to tomorrow? And sometimes I would say, yes, that's fine. If you can have time, go ahead and work that in. later in the day or whatever. Sometimes though, I would prefer that he didn't do that because it's just cramming too much. And it's like, no, you know what? If you can't make the short run off the bike today, just do the bike. That's the most important thing. Don't worry about the run. And no, I don't want you to cram it in tomorrow, you know, when you're already have a big enough workload. Just let it go. It's fine. It's just fine. And I assured him that that was okay. And everything was not going to come off the rails because he missed one little 20-minute run off the bike. It's fine. It's okay. And it worked out really, really well. He ended up swimming at the fast end of the range where we thought he would be. And he ended up, his bike was slightly slower as far as miles per hour goes, but he hit the heart rate targets perfectly. I mean, he was so disciplined and paid so much attention. He nailed that part. And then on the run, he negative split that run there. And it was a hot day. It was phenomenal to see. Really, really fun. Yeah. So I just tried to say, look, you know, execute the training, communicate with me when you're having scheduling problems, and we'll fit it in and make it work, and we'll massage the schedule. And we did that. But he did the work. There's no question about it. He did the work, and he followed the nutrition plan. And he told me he was convinced the nutrition plan made a huge difference too. So yeah.
Yeah,
really fun to see
that. I mean, I remember when I lived in Florida and I would go out on these rides, I was like, and I'm not a very big person. I was like, how could I possibly be going through almost 2 bottles of water, or not water, Gatorade Endurance an hour?
Right.
How is that possible? You know, but when it's hot,
you do.
You have to replenish, otherwise you pay dearly. And
yes, you do.
It gets you on the second half of the run. So the fact that he negative split his run,
yes,
that's phenomenal. And so has he already signed up for his next one?
He already has texted me, and he's figuring out what he's going to do next year. He even literally said, I'm bit by the bug. Like I told you earlier, he literally put those words to me in a text earlier today. So he's ready. Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. I mean, and that wouldn't have happened if his first day hadn't been as successful, you know, I mean, feeling like he had a good day. And that's great.
He asked me too, he asked me if I thought, because he felt so good on the run at the end, if he didn't work hard enough on the bike. And I said, no, that is not the case at all. You nailed it perfectly. And you should have, we wanted you to feel good on the run. You know, if you can negative split the run, you did something right on the bike, right? So yeah, he had a great first experience, and the reward that I got was just him being so incredibly happy and ready to go on to the next one. So I can't wait to keep working with him. It's really going to be fun. Really, really fun. It's very energizing for me, very rewarding. I love it.
Love it. So, so what would you say so far has been your biggest coaching challenge?
I had an athlete earlier this year that, as I mentioned, was training for a marathon. And the big challenge there was just the inability to get the training done. And that was really difficult. And, you know, we corresponded a lot, and I adjusted the schedule as much as I could, but there was just too many key workouts that were not done, just didn't get done. And I tried to be a cheerleader as much as possible and do everything I could to, you know, tell this athlete that this is really important. You get these done. And a couple of them were, but too many were not. So the day didn't come together anywhere near where she wanted it to. And we had a conversation about it, and I just said, look, you and I both know, you know, the training wasn't quite perfect. So, you know, if we have an opportunity to work together again next time, you know, we'll have to really make sure you know, that there's time to get the training done, because there's a minimum amount of training you have to do, and that didn't quite take place. So that was a challenge, but we communicated about it best I could do. But I can't drag people out the door, you know, so.
Yeah. I mean, the reality is, well, you mentioned it in one of your lists, is consistency, right? You have to, you know, have to get in the workouts, and you can miss, you can miss 1, 2. I mean, like, it's not that it has to be perfect. I always laugh. I'm like, my son comes and looks sometimes at the training plans on my computer, and he's like, "Who's that person that's all green?" And he's like,
Yeah,
"Oh, look at that person with the rainbow colors, like it was that, you know."
yes,
And
yes.
like he already knows at 11, like what it means to be consistent and not, which is, which is good. But yeah, it's hard when it's like when an athlete doesn't have a good day, and you know why that happened.
Mhm.
You see the failings, you see the indications in their training that this is,
Right.
the day isn't going to be what they want, but it's still tough. It's still
Yeah,
hard to see it as a coach.
it
You hope
is.
you can
Yeah,
somehow be able to pull it off, so,
right, right. Yeah.
but so on the flip side of that, what would you say has been your biggest success so far?
I think the biggest success is the athlete I was just talking about. I mean, by far because like I said, he was absolutely brand new. I mean, went from 0 to 100 in just a few weeks, or I'm sorry, a few months. And no sprint in between, no Olympic distance, just went straight into the deep end into a 70.3 and nailed it. That to me, I'm still fired up from that as his coach. I still am. I mean, I don't know if you can hear it, but I'm still very amped up about that for both of us, because
Yeah,
it was just so much fun to see his success, and then to have the conversation with him after and hear him tell me about it and how excited he was. And then I did a little thing on social media about him and boasted about him a little bit. And I said, no, you have to go and show your kids and your wife how awesome you are and soak it up all week, So that it was just so much fun to walk him through that whole process as a first time triathlete, committing to a race of that distance, and then, like I said, consistently doing the work, and then nailing it on race day. And the high he got from that was incredible. I mean, just incredible. So, like I said, that's my biggest success so far. Because went from 0 to putting on that medal was a big deal, huge deal, and I'm so excited for him. So we'll see what
I'm
happens.
excited for you and
Yeah, it's
like
awesome. It's
the
just
energy
so
goes there.
great. Yeah, it's just
Yeah,
so great. So yeah, very, very, very fun.
awesome. So as you now go and work your way out of corporate life and take
Mhm.
on coaching, like as your full time, so you're open for new athletes, right?
Absolutely. Yes, I am. Yes, definitely.
All right. So anything that I haven't asked you about that you want to say?
Not that I can think of. We covered a lot of good stuff. I appreciate you asking me to be here today. It's been
Oh,
very fun. Yeah,
thank you very much for joining us, and looking forward to. I really did enjoy getting to know you. This is the best part for me, like in this job, is I get to know all the coaches, and so I'm always impressed with who we have. I mean, reminds me every day why I'm really happy to be a coach with QT2. So,
super. Thank you very much.
all right, thank you, Bob.